Welcome to the Strong and the Geek podcast. Your weekly update on all things movie, music, comic books, pop culture, and every now and then a surprising twist. I'm your host, Josh Ramirez, and with me is my special guest co-host, Not Ray Romano. How's it going, Not Ray?
Oh, I'm doing good. This is not Ray Romano at all.
No, that sounds more like a
Simpsons
like
character.
A Sesame Street character.
Yeah.
Alright, we have a very exciting show for you this wonderful Sunday morning. We will be discussing some TV shows, some new trailers that came out, all that sort of thing. And finally, our main topic of the evening, we'll be discussing the 4-part Invasion crossover that the CW DC shows had this week. We call it a 4-part crossover. Really, it's a 3 and 30-second part.
It's a 3-part and a post-credit scene.
Right. But more on that later.
Yeah.
First things first. So what'd you get into this week?
I watched a movie that I, out of the gate, assumed was going to be a garbage movie. Intentionally watched it because I wanted to review it. And, it wasn't actually as bad as I thought it would be. It still wasn't great. True Memoirs of an International Assassin.
Okay.
Which is a Kevin James action comedy.
Is it Netflix only?
Yeah, it's a Netflix original. Basically, Kevin James is a writer who writes a spy book in which he is the assassin. Obviously, it's supposed to be written as if it's a true story.
Right.
But he gets published, and the publisher, puts it in under nonfiction to sell more copies. And she's like, yeah, it'll be great. You'll do your whole book tour. You pretend to be an assassin. Then it comes out that you're a liar. And then you can write another book about how, you were pressured into it or whatever. And you'll sell lots and lots and lots of books. And he's like, I don't feel comfortable with that. So they bring him on to speak to, I think, Katie Couric or somebody like that. And he just freaks out on air the moment she says, asks a single question. So he gets up and he runs out of the studio. So he talks to this guy where he got all his ideas from, which he says that he used to be a consultant for Mossad. And so that's where he gets all the stories from. And he gets this story of someone called the Ghost. And in the book, the character then goes by the moniker the Ghost. Now, the Ghost was the legend of some assassin that eventually went missing and was presumed dead, but some people still think he's alive. To which everyone watching this movie immediately goes, oh, the Mossad guy, he's the Ghost. Like, it's very obvious. But of course, that's the big reveal. Spoiler alert. But in any case, Kevin James gets kidnapped and brought to Venezuela by a group of rebels looking to overthrow the government, who believe that he is the Ghost, and they're trying to hire him to assassinate the president of Venezuela.
Okay.
So then he's trying to figure out what to do, because they're like, we'll kill you if you don't do it. And he's like, oh shit, well I guess I gotta assassinate the president of Venezuela, or find a way out of Venezuela before these guys can find me. Then he gets kidnapped by a Russian oligarch.
So really this is just a movie about Kevin James being mistaken for a killer, and so he just keeps getting abducted.
Right, yeah. He gets abducted by the guerrillas,
right.
Then he gets abducted by this Russian drug
so how does the movie
kingpin.
How does the movie end?
And then he gets then he gets abducted by the government itself, and each one is trying to get him to kill somebody else.
Right. So the movie is
ends up with all 3 of the people that he was supposed to kill being killed.
Oh.
The president kills himself. The Russian person gets killed just by gunfire, and he actually manages to kill the guy that hired him initially.
Okay,
who was the guerrilla that was going to overthrow the government.
Was it funny?
No.
Well, what would you rate it?
I would give it a 5.
Oh, okay. So
I thought it was going to be like a 2.
Mediocre.
It's not funny because of jokes. It's just like situation like, oh my god, watch Kevin James fall down in the jungle. But the actual plot is pretty well written because he keeps, now there's a 3-way thing going on.
Mm. Okay. Well, that sounds very Happy Madison.
Yeah. Modern Happy Madison, for sure.
I'm saying, they're studios.
Yeah.
Nothing out of the ordinary for them.
Yeah. But you know what? If you have nothing else to do, worth checking out.
Nah. I'm not going to check it out.
It's not the worst movie ever.
Kevin can wait, so they say.
Oh, I see what you did there.
That is a joke.
I'm going to turn back into Ray Romano.
Yeah. So I wanted to discuss The Weeknd, and not what the weekend in terms of Saturday, Sunday, but the weekend in terms of the musical artist.
Oh, you mean The Weeknd?
Weeknd, who was our special guest musical intro this week. That was the track Sidewalks, featuring The Weeknd, featuring Kendrick Lamar, from his album Starboy, and which was released last week. Yes, last week. And I wanted to quickly just say, this is a very good album.
Okay.
I've given it a couple listen-throughs. It is very Michael Jackson-esque, and The Weeknd has actually gone on to say that Michael Jackson's probably his biggest inspiration, and you can definitely pick it up in most of the tracks. The production on the album is probably my favorite. There's just all-star teams of producers on almost every track. And in particular, there's a couple tracks that Daft Punk produces on, and obviously, I'm a huge Daft Punk fan for any of the listeners who don't know that, but you put Daft Punk in anything, and I'm gonna be a fan of it.
Those guys are fantastic.
So overall, I would give the album an 8 out of 10.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, truth be told, I like anything that's Michael Jackson inspired because we love little Michael.
Yeah, we do. Mike Jacko. We love Jacko. But yeah, so moving on, another thing I wanted to discuss that we got this week was our second teaser for Guardians of the Galaxy.
I'd say this one's more of a real trailer.
2. Yeah, it doesn't really tell you anything about the plot at all, so in that sense it's not a full trailer, I would say, but it definitely was more footage, and it was gave us tastes of everybody and what they might be doing to some degree.
Yeah.
And can I just start off by saying, Baby Groot.
Baby Groot is going to sell more toys than any character.
Oh, tickle me
ever.
Yeah. So I found that whole bit in the trailer. So if you haven't seen it yet, check it out. There's a little bit where Rocket is trying to explain to Baby Groot like how to this bomb and don't press this button or it'll blow up this bomb. And he's like, so repeat after me what I said. And then of course Baby Groot's
I'm Groot.
I am Groot.
Yeah.
But that right there sold me that it's going to be.
Apparently, what James Gunn and Kevin Feige have said is that this version of Groot still retains all the memories,
right, but
is more infantile in his
decision making.
Yeah, he's more immature.
Yeah, well, he's baby, so
yeah. So that's cool. Evidently, he's still voiced by Vin Diesel. They just tweak his voice to make it sound like a little baby character.
So yeah, I'm most looking forward to that dynamic between the two of them. But then also, the trailer ended with that scene with I guess Star-Lord's mind being read or something, and it being saying like his feelings for Gamora in front of all of them, and
sexual,
and Drax just like geeks out, and Drax was my second.
Do me next.
He was probably my second favorite part of the first one, so I'm excited to see him again. Also,
it seems like maybe he's gonna understand stuff a bit better in this one, and he's gone from being like Thor in Thor 1, where he just didn't get anything, to being more like a bro in this one. Like, you're an idiot. Do me.
Well, kind of like Thor in the Avengers or something. So yeah, we're definitely looking forward for Guardians of the Galaxy 2 next year. This next year in May, right? 2017 May?
I believe so.
All right, so that's not super long. Ooh, 2017 is going to be a great comic book movie year.
Yeah. By the way, I did like the little nod to the fact that Rocket rides on Groot's shoulder in the first one, and now Groot's riding on Rocket's shoulder.
That was good.
And apparently the big scene with that giant monster is going to be, because this one actually doesn't take place in the same timeline as every other Marvel movie releases about the same length away from the last movie.
Right.
But this one apparently starts only a couple months after the first one.
Oh, okay.
And it's not surrounding an Infinity Stone, so the story's probably going to be a little bit separate from what's going on in the rest of the Marvel Universe.
Right.
And evidently they are now super famous in the galaxy because of what happened with Ronan the Accuser. So evidently that monster is probably something they were hired to kill or something.
But I feel like this movie's going to have to end with something connecting it to the greater MCU, because this is our last outing with the Guardians before Infinity War, right?
Yeah.
Which they are confirmed to be in.
Yeah, I assume that the post-credit scene is going to
the movie
strongly tie them to, we have to get to Earth.
Or something like that, yeah. All right, so yeah, overall the trailer's got us pumped. We're ready for the next trailer and ultimately the film.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's probably... Oh, actually, no. It's not time for the Geek of the Week yet. Geek of the Week, you can wait. There was one other thing we wanted to discuss before we give out awards to anybody, and that's the newest episode of South Park we got.
Oh, yeah, South Park.
So South Park took the week off for Thanksgiving, so they came back this week, and what'd you think of it?
I like this episode. I like that they were a little self-aware of the fact that some of the things that you were unhappy about this season.
I think they were momentarily self-aware.
That they were pointing out the fact that we don't know if we like this structure either. It's just what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And I think that the secret thing that they're pointing at too in this season, which I don't think was a secret, but maybe it really revealed itself in this episode, is that this season Gerald is supposed to be South Park.
Right.
And like him trolling everything, and the fact that he's just pointing out, I just do it because I think it's funny. I'm not trying to make a bigger message about, I'm not trying to bring down governments or anything like that. And that maybe the writers kind of feel backed into a corner because the world is telling them like you can't joke around like this anymore.
Or for so long people have been looking at South Park as like an actual like news or like critique of society. It's like we don't give a shit about any of that. We just like making fun of stuff.
Yeah. Now when he came right out and said, "I'm a satirist. I do this to be funny, like just to get laughs," I was like, well, that's them coming around and saying like, stop looking at us to be important.
Yeah.
We're just trying to make people laugh.
Which is kind of what, like, for instance, like The Daily Show says, or John Oliver says in Last Week Tonight. Like, we're just comedians. We're not trying to change the world here at the level that you think we are.
Yeah. So I think this episode really pointed out the fact that like Gerald is Trey and Matt in this season.
Now, the things I didn't like about this episode, I mean, I'm still not a fan of the season as a whole, and this episode didn't change that to any degree. I didn't like the reveal that the Danish guy isn't Danish. He's just like the greatest troll of them all. We'll presumably see what's up with that next week. I also didn't like that there were no member berries. Like, we had previous episode, the member berries take over the White House, and it looks like something's happening, and no mention of that at all this week.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen what's going on, but maybe they're just saving that for a bigger.
Well, I just don't like the idea that the
reveal.
member berries and this thing, and I guess those are the two big plot lines now. The member berries are up to something, and now we have the troll thing that's. Oh, and then them trying to go to Mars. That's the third thing. So obviously the three are going to converge because this next episode's the last one.
Right.
But it just feels, I don't know, like I hope that they tie it together well and it has a good payoff, but really, please, Matt and Trey, go back to just being episodic. Like, just go back to doing contained stories that we enjoy.
Yeah. Even if it, like what they did a couple seasons ago where it was clear that all the things were happening in the same timeline, but they weren't connected.
Right.
Like, the next time they were at the gym was...
As a man, no, his parents really are dead or something, and he remembers that Cartman did it.
Yeah.
Or that just was throwaway lines like, well, one time I cut a guy up and made him chili. Like, it did happen, but it's not a factor that contributes to anything now.
Yeah.
So yeah, so far the season's been maybe like I would say a 7 for me. I don't think it's going to change because of...
Then you do like it. I mean, 7's pretty good.
I would say 7's maybe a 6.5 then. I would say it's good. It's not... South Park's still South Park.
Yeah.
And I'm intrigued, but compared to previous seasons that have been 8s and 9s and 9.5s, it's lacking.
Okay, fair enough.
But yeah. So, moving on, I think it's about time to discuss our Geek of the Week.
Geek of the Week! The dude in the news.
I feel like we haven't done a lot of sound effects lately. Let's throw in a couple sound effects.
Oh, yeah. Hadouken!
Perfect. All right. That was a good waste of pandering. All right. So All right. This week, our Geek of the Week is the one and only Billy D. Williams.
Oh, BD.
Lando.
Yeah.
Also Harvey Dent, and he's the geek.
And a lot of people forget that one.
Yeah, well, he's the Geek of the Week this week because a lot of people do forget that he was Harvey Dent. Or at the time didn't connect the dots that Harvey Dent was Two-Face. But originally, he was the plan when Tim Burton did that was that he was gonna come back and be Two-Face in a further movie. But WB and new directors took over, and it ended up casting Tommy Lee Jones to take the role over. So literally in continuity, they changed his race, which normally you can change the actor that plays a character, but you don't in the same timeline change the race of that character. I think that's the only time I can think of that ever happening.
Yeah.
But so for years and years and years, fans have always been like, wow, I wonder if Billy D would ever get a chance to actually be Two-Face and more than just Harvey Dent. Well, this week we got confirmation that for the Lego Batman movie, he will be doing the voice of Two-Face, so he has his retribution after all these years.
Yeah.
Almost 20 years later.
Unfortunately, he's not. Well, to our knowledge, he's not going to be coming back as Lando Calrissian in Episode 8.
No, as far as we know, well, yeah, that we don't know. We do know that Childish Gambino is going to be playing the young Lando.
Yeah,
so that's pretty cool.
That's got to be perfect casting.
Yeah, that's very cool.
He even looks like Billy D. Williams.
Yeah, which is good. So I'm excited to see what ultimately comes about there. But either way, Billy D, congratulations. We're excited to see the Lego Batman movie. It looks hilarious. And to hear your voice. Now, what I'm interested to see what they do is, are they going to make Two-Face an African-American Lego to make him look like Billy D would look? Or are they just going to have him do the voice but have it be a Caucasian Harvey?
Oh, that's a good question. I think they're going to go for whatever the Lego version of Two-Face already looks like.
Yeah, probably.
So it would probably be Caucasian.
Presumably, yeah.
In fact, I imagine he's probably closer to the animated series in the way that the Lego character looks.
Right. But either way, it'll be cool. And Billy D does have that sweet voice. That silky smooth caramel voice. But
You need a minute?
I mean, I'm getting hot and bothered over here. So,
what the hell,
Huzzah!
What?
Your check is in the mail, Billy D, for $0.00 from the Strong and Geek Foundation.
Yeah, you work for that check.
You do. So our main topic tonight is the Arrowverse, the CW Arrow.
I think they're calling it the Flareverse now?
Everywhere I see it's called Arrowverse.
Huh, you see, I thought they threw the FL in the beginning of that because Flash is...
Flareverse?
Yeah, that's what I heard.
I haven't heard that. But anyway, which encompasses Supergirl, Arrow, Flash, and DC's Legends of Tomorrow.
Which... I'm loving Legends this season.
Yeah. So what happened was, for any of you who haven't been keeping up to date with the shows, they had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Each show is a different night. So this week they had their mega crossover event, which began at the very end of Supergirl with a little tease, and then has carried over for Flash, Arrow, and Legends of Tomorrow. And the big dynamic has been the Dominators, which are these aliens who have a really big fear of metahumans, and they think that metahumans are a big risk to the universe kind of as a whole, so they go to different planets and identify superpowered beings on that planet and try to eliminate them or take their powers away. So the Dominators have come to Earth in 2016. Actually, it's revealed that they had come before, but this was
back in the 50s.
That they came back in 2016 to kind of finish what they started because they've seen the metahuman threat really became...
Specifically because of Flashpoint.
Well, yeah, that was the big reveal, yeah.
Yeah, the Flashpoint was humans breaking their treaty and Meta using his powers to rewrite history.
Which is like obviously the last straw for them.
Yeah.
That you humans are becoming too powerful now that they're those of you that can fly and run. And
somehow they were able to notice.
Yeah, which that didn't really...
They didn't try to explain that. That timeline had been changed, but maybe they got the same kind of technology that the Time Masters have.
Right. So let's just start from the beginning. So Supergirl was
just an episode of Supergirl.
Was teased as being part of the crossover, but really, yeah, it was just an episode of Supergirl. So really, in terms of the crossover, all we got was at the very end. Well, throughout the episode, there were breaches. There was two. No, it happened twice.
Oh, it did happen twice. I only remember it happening the once when she's fighting against.
There was a breach. No, that was
Cyborg Superman.
At the beginning, there was a breach that just kind of happened, and then there was another during the fight. And at the episode culminated that the third breach opens up. Cisco and Barry jump out and tell Kara, hey, we need your help. There are aliens on our Earth. And so she goes back with them. She's on Earth 38 now, by the way. That's her Earth.
Oh, okay.
In case you didn't know.
She's not Earth 3?
No, she's Earth 38. Earth 3 is where Jay Garrick's from.
Yeah, I thought that it was going to turn out that they were in the same Earth and we were going to get Jay Garrick, Flash, and Supergirl.
No, that'd be cool, but no. She's Earth 38.
Not.
But anyway, so Kara and Cisco and Barry go back to the Flash world.
Before we even go on to that, I honestly cannot remember what happened in Supergirl.
Oh, whatever. Like, we're talking just about the crossover. Yeah. The Supergirl
that's right. They had a big virus that was supposed to kill all aliens, and they made it wrong, and they eventually arrested Mama Luthor.
Yep, Mama Luthor. Okay. And then they were able to turn the virus so that it was harmless.
But at the end, Cyborg Superman did Batman his way out of there.
Yes.
He just disappeared.
So Cyborg Superman presumably will be coming back. And Mon-El's fine, but I don't know if he was pretending not to remember kissing Kara, or if he actually
Oh,
does
that's
it.
right. One of those, the oldest like
Trick in the
trope
book.
in sitcoms.
But we'll see if they...
Actually, I remember I was watching it with my wife, and I was like, I bet you he's not going to remember kissing her.
Yeah, we'll see how far their romance buds and blooms. But anyway, so moving to Flash.
Right.
So Flash is where it all really got going.
Yeah. So Flash jumps back a few hours from that moment to show the invasion of Earth by aliens.
Right, they
which,
crashed.
for whatever reason, we find out they're specifically there for Flash. He's the one that runs up to the ship, and they all just run right past him. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
They left him on the ground. You'd think they would just run out, grab him, put him in the ship, and then no more of the crossover
Right,
happens.
well, presumably, remember that we're going to say that maybe those original Dominators didn't know that, because those were like scouts. So their first part was they crashed Central City, and Flash checks it out, figures out there's aliens. With the Argus contacts, they find out that the aliens have been here before. They find out they're Dominators and that kind of stuff. So Barry's like, uh-oh, if we're going to fight impending invasion of aliens around the world, I can't handle this by myself. I need to assemble the team. So, Key, Oliver, and the Legends of Tomorrow, and then that's when they hop over.
I was glad that they immediately were like, yeah, we didn't cross over at all in Supergirl, so let's just get everyone on board now.
Everybody.
Because I was afraid it was going to be like building with each episode, like, oh, we need more friends to help. But no, they got right into it. Unfortunately, some of the drama in Flash, I think this whole season, but in this episode as well, has just been kind of manufactured.
Okay.
It's been like, oh, everyone's mad at Barry because of what he did, and we're not going to let go of that. And then it's like, you know what Barry did? Oh my god, he did that? Well, I'm mad at him too. You know, like the whole business with the fact that him going back somehow made Diggle and Lila have a son instead of a daughter. That Diggle was super mad about that.
Right.
It's like, but you still have a healthy kid.
Yeah.
Like, what? You're mad that you didn't have a daughter instead of your son?
No,
you should
I
just
think-
be happy that you have your son.
I think he's mad that the idea that his daughter was erased, like, from history. So, I mean, we can't say, obviously this is fiction, so we can't say for sure how we would feel if we found out that we had a whole other life that was just erased.
Right, well, that's fair, but the point I'm making is that
I think they're too hard on Barry.
If it was that Diggle had 2 kids, and because of this, like, he's like, I never have a daughter that I get to meet, but in this case it's, oh, but if you would have done that, then I never would have gotten to meet my son. So I don't care that I don't have a kid that I never met, because, you know what I mean? Like, as a parent, the idea that, like, if I woke up tomorrow and one of my kids was a different kid, I would be furious.
Right.
But that's because I know my kid. If I woke up tomorrow and my kid was someone different altogether, or if someone came up to me and was like, you know, in a different life, you had a different kid altogether, I'd be like, oh, crazy, I guess.
Right. I think that I can understand why they are shook up, but yeah, I agree with you that I think that they very often feel like, oh, we have to be mad at Barry because he did this. Whereas actually the one person who typically is the most common to say, no, you can't do that with your powers, you have to be responsible, is Oliver, and Oliver is the only one who didn't get mad at Barry. Oliver is the one who was like, Barry, you did what you had to do, and you have to own that. But that being said, like, we have to get our shit together, because we have a bigger fish to fry right now.
Well, he doesn't have a lot of room to talk. He's like, hey, do you remember that time I was in the Broad Fund? I murdered a guy in a prison cell.
Yeah.
Like, he can't really be on the moral high ground with anybody.
But, you know, that's, just to say, that was my favorite part of this crossover event by far, was seeing Oliver and Barry, like, how they really are the leaders now, and how they interacted with everybody else.
Yeah, and I thought there was going to be kind of like a fight between them over, like, who's really in charge here.
Right.
But
Oliver,
that was just kind of like a throwaway joke.
Well, and Oliver very quickly was fine to say, no, Barry should be the leader here. He brought us all together, which I think shows maturity in Oliver's person.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, Flash culminated in the Dominators taking over the minds of the human character. Of the human character.
Mine!
Oh, God. Controlling the minds and abducting the human characters so they can get ideas from them about the metahumans to know how to defeat them or whatever.
Right. Which turned Arrow into basically for the man who has everything.
Yes. So tell us what happened then in Arrow.
So in Arrow, it
picks up with them on the ship abducted.
Yeah, and basically the aliens incept them. The comic for the man who loves everything that was also adapted into an episode of Justice League. Or was it Justice League Unlimited?
Justice League Unlimited. It was the episode 2 or 3 of
yeah, basically it's the story of how Superman is... Batman and Wonder Woman are showing up to the Fortress of Solitude to throw Superman a little birthday party when they find him in a coma and he is being forced to live a different life, which is he's still on Krypton and he has a son and a wife and everything's happy. His parents are still alive. But eventually he starts to see through it and realize... that it's an illusion, and so he has to break out, just like what happened in Arrow. The difference, and the reason why I didn't love this episode of Arrow, was because in The Man Who Loves Everything, he had...
The Man Who Has Everything.
For The Man Who Has Everything.
What
did I say?
Loves everything.
Oh, I meant to say for the man who loves everything. For The Man Who Has Everything, Superman has to look into the eyes of a kid that he remembers... like the day he was born, and he remembers all these events that happened with his parents and all these things that happened with his wife. He has to look into their eyes and be like, "You're not real. You're not real. I can't."
Right.
And it's breaking my heart to say this, but I know you're not real. In this case, they were just like still talking to Laurel as if she was real. And it didn't seem to have the same kind of emotional impact.
But I kind of can see the other side of it, that if you're seeing something to them, it's like the Matrix, like that is, you can see it and feel it and interact with it to every degree. It's real to you in that moment.
Yeah, but I feel like it didn't break them as much as it broke Superman.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I would have liked to seen it written to be a bit more like... The only one that really it seemed to break was Thea.
Yeah, well, and Thea was all in on staying if she could.
And I liked that.
Yeah.
I liked that they had at least one person that was like, I can't do it.
Right.
And the one thing that I wish would have, when she showed up and they're like, what happened? If she was like, I would never have been able to look at them and know that they're real.
Well, which is what was was definitely the subtext there.
Yeah, like even though I want to be here, I would look at them every day and know like this is still me making this up.
So I definitely think this was Arrow's strongest outing for me in a while, particularly getting to see all the emotionally the arcs were very good in my opinion, but also getting to see Deathstroke back and Merlin and all them and the League of Assassins, all of them. So basically,
that fight was awesome.
Arrow's greatest hits. Battling, obviously, the Arrow team, and it was sweet, and the choreography was great, and anytime you bring Deathstroke back, it's fantastic.
Now, there were a couple things, technically speaking, in this episode that made me have pause. Not like I hate it, but it was... Alright, so the first was when Oliver runs into... Diggle pulls Oliver out, and he's like, yeah, I think you're right. I think we're not... we need to talk about why there's a building that says smoke on it,
Right.
And they did that camera trick where it spins around them while they're talking. And I know that as a cinematographer, that's supposed to imply to the audience a sense of confusion with the characters instead of just showing them talking. But God, I hate that camera trick. Just because the camera spins around them constantly. It was
very dizzy.
And then it turns and it's like, oh, there's Deathstroke. That's the kind of thing I was talking about.
Right.
I would have preferred if it was just reaction shots between the two. That's, again, just a technical thing.
Well, they try and do it in one shot, but it's...
The one thing that I found interesting was that I thought it was, going into the episode, I thought it was going to be a bunch of different, this is this person's perfect life, and this is this person's perfect life. No, but it was a collective. One big narrative, mostly just around what Oliver's perfect life would be. And... turns out Diggle is just super jealous and he wants to be Green Arrow, I guess.
Right, well, no, they were following... It was perfect life for all of them because, Adam Ray had a fiance to Felicity.
Right, but you think that if it really was perfect for him, his ex-fiance wouldn't have died. It would have been her. So I feel like they were like, okay, we think that Oliver seems to be the leader here, so we'll base the narrative off of him.
Maybe, I don't know.
And we'll make everyone else, things that they would want to be in this universe.
I don't think what they were doing was making it... This is the difference also. So, the black, whatever it's called, the plant in the comic book that makes Superman... gives you your desires.
I can't remember.
It's like the Black Siren or something like that. But that shows you your heart's deepest desires. I think what they were doing was tapping into their memories and taking their happy memories and creating a world out of that. As opposed to because you can't see someone's desires, really, but you can see memories you could tap into.
Right.
So I think
but I'm just saying, from our perspective as the audience, it's clear that Oliver, this is an episode of Arrow, it's centered around him.
Right.
But if you think about it from the perspective of their universe, the fact that Ray was there was by chance.
Right.
You know what I mean? The fact that he made it to their wedding all by chance. He could have been doing something completely different, and they never would have pulled him out because they didn't even know he was there.
But they said that Ray was, and that Palmer Tech or whatever was working with Queen Consolidated, and that's why they were close to friends and stuff.
Now, here's the other thing. Again, I don't know why they did it. They chose to. It was a choice. Do you notice that in the machine they woke up and they were all wearing clothes that were tailored to their sizes?
This was the one thing that I also was going to say this was probably the only thing I didn't like about the episode. Yeah, why did they have clothes?
Did the aliens change? Realistically, if they wanted, they had to strip them naked.
Yes.
So why wouldn't they just leave them? The aliens are naked.
Yeah.
They obviously have no sense of modesty.
Well, that's what I was saying, is where do the aliens get those clothes?
They make clothes? Do they have an alien seamstress who's like, well, hang on. We don't want them to be naked when they wake up.
We need matching prisoner outfits for them.
We're assuming that they're going to be locked in these pods forever, but we don't want them to be naked.
That made no sense to me at all.
They should have just been in their costumes.
Regular, yeah.
And then when they woke up, obviously they don't have their weapons. I get that. They don't want to leave the weapons right there. But when they walk out into the hallway, Oliver just happens to grab a gun off the wall
and know how to use it perfectly.
And they even make the joke I guess some things are universal, whatever. Right. It's there happened to be a gun, but do they have a gun every few paces?
Yeah, well, who does that? That's very poor just decision making by the Dominators.
It seems like they had this entire idea for an episode, and then when they got to the end of it, they were like, I don't know, just whatever. I mean, no, get them off the ship somehow.
I did feel like that they were very easy. It was very easy for them to get off that ship once they broke out of the spell. So I would say that was, to me, the weakest of the three for the crossover was Arrow because of that ending bit. But everything up until that, the entire Matrix kind of vibe, I thought that was great.
See, what I actually would have loved is if it was even more self-aware of that fact, and they get on the ship and they're like, God, this seemed really easy. And then someone's like, hey, what are you wearing? Like, wait a minute. What are we wearing? Yeah. And then they're still in another layer in the machine. Like it's like a failsafe. You know what I mean? And they wake up and they're like, oh, okay, this is the real world. We need to get out of here.
I think that would have been stupid.
Made the episode too long.
That would have been and that would also would have been too hokey jokey. I think that it's a silly decision to have them wear the outfits, but it's fine. It's whatever.
And that they can just get out of the ship.
They didn't take
without any real work.
Well, yeah. The fact that they got to an escape pod, that's a solid plan. If they would have taken over the ship and learned how to fly and everything, that would have been way too far-fetched. But getting an escape pod and getting out of there, okay.
And then getting picked up by the Wave Rider, which is fair enough.
That I was like, okay, it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
All right, so then they get them back. They get back to Star Labs. Everybody gets prepped and ready to go, and that took us to Legends,
which I think was the strongest episode of the crossover.
So Flash was pretty much the team against itself. Arrow was the team figuring out what they need to do. Legends finally here. We know we figure out the Dominator's plan. They're trying to kill all the metahumans, so we need to stop them and fight them. So we finally got the invasion happen and the battle happen.
Well, first we had them go back in time, to try and get one to interrogate,
which went
badly.
And
we get to see, first of all, this character, the leader, the Agent Smith or whatever. We get to see him as a young man in the 50s and then as an older man today. And we get to see the fact that the Dominators remembered that they were there, and them being there is the reason why they were like, oh, well, we're going to have to do something about this because there are metas on that planet. It seems like before that, they showed up because the JSA was there, and they weren't sure if it was going to be a problem or not. But them going back in time actually created a circumstance where they're like, well, yeah, no, it's a problem, which I thought was well done. And it gave Cisco a reason to forgive Barry because he also went back in time and screwed something up.
Which I liked.
Yeah. And I'm glad that is done now.
I'm glad that Cisco had that epiphany.
I don't want to hear any more about Cisco's brother. I'm done with Cisco being mad at Barry. It's seems like just manufactured drama to pad the runtime.
Well, okay. So that's good that it's done with. So then they come back to the future. Back to the future. And they have to fight the Dominators. They all get teamed up. But Oliver, interestingly enough, has become, out of nowhere, hesitant of aliens, I guess. That was the one thing that caught me off guard. So he asks Supergirl to stay behind or not to play it cool. And I didn't understand that because there was no context given there. If Oliver had been initially afraid of Kara, that would have been fine. But instead, he was from the get-go, he was like, okay, we need to train with you. You're the strongest. We need to figure out from you. The second episode, there's no mention of Supergirl.
Maybe it has something to do with being abducted and put in a mind blender.
I think that's the presumption.
That he now has some kind of prejudice against aliens.
But there was nothing written in there that would actively say that. It was kind of just him saying, like,
and then we see a parallel with Wild Dog with Metas.
Yes.
And it isn't until Oliver gets saved by Supergirl and he gets saved by Metas that both of them are like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have been so judgmental.
Right. Nice, sweet moment.
Yeah.
But this all culminates in the Flash, Barry they find out the Dominators just want Flash and they'll leave Earth alone. Barry offers himself and they all say, no, like, we're not going to let you go.
Yeah, you can't make that decision.
Like,
you're part of this.
You're part of the team and we're heroes. We'll do this together. And all this culminates in the final battle of Legends, Arrow, and Flash v. Aliens. And I will say, the fight was awesome.
Yeah. The one thing I love about these shows is the choreography. And some of the special effects are really good. Like, Arrow's really good with choreography. Flash and Legends great with special effects. And so all together, it was great. Seeing Barry, zipping around and then seeing Oliver smack people with his bow.
And I like that we got to see Flash. We don't normally get to see him in using his speed in any capacity other than, him being a little blur running around and then things happen. I like how they did the kind of adopted the Days of Future Past kind of thing, where it's like slowed down at him like moving people's guns and pushing things.
I want to point out the fact that in the Flash episode of the crossover, Diggle and Oliver were about to die.
Yes.
Like, they threw that away like, well, actually, I saved your lives. But it's like, these guys have been doing this for years. That was the day they were going to die.
Yeah.
And Barry happened to be there.
Right. I like that. I just like seeing all their powers, like seeing them working together.
And we got a real superhero moment where it's like, these people are landing all over the country. We need Barry and Kara to fly at the speed of light or whatever to place these all over the country, and they're like on it, and they take off. That was a real, straight up superhero moment.
Which like seeing them all and seeing them doing those sorts of things for me was like, holy shit, I can't wait for Justice League if it's like this. But at the same time, like that is exactly what would happen. Like if it was Superman and Flash, like if it was the Justice League, they'd be like, okay, we're gonna do this. Bats, you handle this. Yeah. And it's exactly how it was here with different characters. And then I really liked the kind of emotional arc of Dr. Stein and his daughter, and like coming to grips with that, but then using that as like the motivating force when Firestorm was trying to transmute the bomb and turn it into just like a water balloon.
Yeah.
And I like how they were able to do that with like him saying, okay, you know what, I have a daughter and we need to, and that's my motivating force now. Let's do this. And they can combine their energy to make it happen.
And I liked where he started off. He was like, I don't want to get close to her because she's not real.
Like I have
like he in his mind is like, she's not a real person. I can't let myself think she's a real person because I'm going to have to go back in time and erase her. And then at the end he's like, I want to get to know my daughter. When him and her have a moment where he realizes that she's a lot like him.
Right.
Which is going to provide for drama in Legends tomorrow, which is something that we actually don't have. The thing about Legends is that because they have something cool to fall back on, like being able to go to different time periods and a lot of action because of that, we don't get a lot of interpersonal drama. This will definitely be interpersonal drama with that him holding that secret. But we got to see a lot of really cool stuff in this. One of my favorite characters in all of these is Mick. Heatwave,
right?
He's such should be a two-dimensional character, but I just like that he's there to be like, I'm gonna let the world burn, whatever. Yeah. Like when he first meets Supergirl, and he's like, I'm not gonna call you Supergirl.
I'm gonna call you Skirt.
I'm gonna call you Skirt.
Yeah, and I like how it ended. Well, so they defeat the Dominators, no surprise, and it ends with them, getting ready to part their own ways, but they're being like awarded some prestigious award by the president.
Yeah.
There, and then I like how it ended with going back to just Oliver and Barry, where it like all started.
Yeah, just sitting at a bar,
hanging out, just being like, man, the world's gotten really crazy. But you know what? Maybe we're part of that now. So let's just have a beer and see what happens next.
I did like the fact that little place where they were using as their staging facility was very clearly the Hall of Justice.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I kept looking at it. I was like, are they going to just say, like, hey, what if we all just be a Justice League?
It's gonna happen. Now, one thing the only last thing that I'd mentioned was that I didn't like was Kara's Earth's Mightiest Heroes line. Was that a jab at Avengers, or was that just like an Avengers like? Hey,
you truly are Earth's mightiest heroes.
Like,
and you just heard like through space and time to Earth 616, someone yell, "Copyright infringement!"
Yeah, like what are you doing? I was like, oh come on.
What if a hammer would have ripped through the ceiling and landed in the ground right at that moment?
See, I would have. Well, I just wish that it would have been like a Justice League line, like something about like that would have been cool. I would have been like, oh my god, but like an Avengers line, no, don't do that.
They were like, oh, assemble?
Yeah, assemble. But all in all, I would give the Flash, Arrow, Supergirl, and Legends of Tomorrow crossover invasion a 9 out of 10.
Yeah?
I thought it was great.
I would give it more like an 8. I feel like it's still really good. I just feel like there were some things that were completely disjunct in, and the fact that Supergirl really had nothing to do with it until the last few seconds.
But that wasn't a surprise. They said that Supergirl was going to be the intro to it, but that's about it.
Well, I was hoping that it would happen earlier in the episode,
right,
and we get more play into it. You know, one other thing in the Supergirl episode that I was like, oh, come on. You know, they had this big thing set up that Martian Manhunter is like poisoned, and he's going to become a white Martian or whatever, and we see him turn into a big monstrous version of him. I was like, oh, this is how they're going to explain how he gets the ability to turn into monsters.
Right.
Because we've seen him shapeshift, but we haven't seen him turn into monsters.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, that's awesome. Let's see him turn into monsters. And then Kara and Alex's mother, Eliza?
I forget what her name
Elizabeth?
is.
Whatever. In any case, she basically is like, you know what? Not only did were we able to save Mon-El, but because of some magic, I was also able to get rid of your blood poisoning too.
Yeah.
It was so like, you know what? I'm just gonna wrap up this storyline in a nice little bow.
Well, and that's what I mean. When you're given a 42 minutes runtime, you gotta sometimes do that.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought, okay, we're gonna get to see Jean turn into frickin' monsters,
right?
And that's gonna be great.
Which personally, that's not what that's the part of the Martian Manhunter that I'm like whatever about. I like his super strength and his mind reading more than his shape shifting. But.
Well, I don't know. After watching the episode of Flash where there was the big hologram monster, I was like, yeah, they can make a pretty convincing looking monster. Let's, but maybe that would like if to have that in every episode would just blow out their budget.
Oh, absolutely, really, very quickly. And by the way, just throwing this out there, that hologram monster that really pissed me off.
That it was a hologram?
Yeah, I hated
that. Was the worst episode of the season.
I didn't know if it was supposed to be like, I was hoping it was going to be like a Toy Man, and it'd be like a robot. That I'd be fine with.
Well, when that first happened, I thought it was going to be a nod to what was happening with the crossover. That was a giant alien.
Yeah.
And that was going to be the catalyst for him going and being like, hey, we have aliens now.
Yeah. Which, the only thing, I'm glad apparently there's talks that the Supergirl, which that also, Cisco scienced up a device to jump through universes, but that
an interdimensional cell phone.
But the good thing is that now we'll probably see more of Supergirl and back and forth in the other shows, which is good. The only thing I hate about these crossovers is that usually the past 2 years they happen and then the next week it goes back to whatever we were doing before this, and it's like no mention of. By the way, guys, last week we just beat a bunch of aliens. Remember that? Like,
judging by the commercial that we saw for Arrow's next episode, it's like back to Tobias Church and the vigilante fella, like, hey, we saved the world, we got recognition from the president, and none of that really matters.
But overall, you heard it here, we both enjoyed Invasion, and think that if the DC shows really do form the Hall of Justice and start Justice Leaguing more, no one here is going to be upset about that.
What do you think about the odds of that? Of them slimming down instead of having 4 different nights a week and like making Arrow and Flash one show?
I think that's not likely at all that would happen, but I would be fine with all 4 shows, just being like Monday night this is happening with this whole big team, and Tuesday night, this whole night, like, I would love
more like Justice League Unlimited, where you see different things happening.
Yeah, but a show that airs 4 nights a week, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, that like instead of necessarily needing an episode of Legends, you have an episode where it's Flash and Firestorm.
Right.
You know what I mean? And they're on an adventure together.
Right. And they're, well, I mean, that would be, so you could call it The Brave and the Bold.
Yeah.
And that would be awesome.
I'd like to see a show based on in World War II era where we're getting more stuff from the JSA.
Society. That'd be cool,
like,
too.
they could totally have their own gig.
And that one I wouldn't be surprised if it's in the works in some capacity.
Well, and we know that Hawkman and Hawkgirl are out there somewhere.
Right. Then they'll be back eventually.
Yeah.
And there's rumor mill that we might get some Green Lantern stuff, but that's been being teased forever, so who knows? Maybe he'll eventually show up.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that, I think, about wraps it up for Flash, Arrow, and Legends and Supergirl.
Yeah,
Next week's the mid-season finales, so then they'll take a little month or two hiatus. Yeah. I think a month hiatus before they come back to start second half of the season. So we'll definitely be talking about that next week. So thank you for joining us on the Strong and the Geek. Make sure to. What was that? No. Make sure to follow us on SoundCloud, on YouTube, on iTunes, Facebook. Do we have a Facebook?
Yeah.
We do. I always forget. Twitter, and all of those wonderful things.
You can Gmail us.
You could Gmail us if you want. So that about does it. You all stay strong.
And stay geek.
Welcome to the post-credits scene. You don't have anything to add to that one?
I felt like you were going to say something.
Nope. We're forming our own Justice League of Society.
Justice League of Society.
The JLS.
We're going to be... No, I don't like that.
No, you don't like it?
We're going to be the Avenging League Society.
You know what I was thinking is if they make another show, is it what, they take Friday night too? Then they only have Saturday, Sunday left.
Yeah.
I just think they should just be the DC network. Just get rid of all the Jane the Virgin and that kind of crap. And just...
Yeah, funny thing is, if you watch the commercials for them, they say DCW for when they do
right,
like the local stuff in DC.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's DCW. I'm like,
yes.
Yeah, no, just make it DCW.
Yeah. Oh, well, maybe we'll find out later on. Who knows?
This post-credit scene was less funny and more informative.
Yeah, chicka chicka.